C'est absolument impressionnant.
Well, quite an impressive film. And we're going to debate about this with the Senator Leila de Lima, a very courageous person.
Vous savez sans doute, la sénatrice a été emprisonnée.
You know that she was put into prison on the 27th of Feb. And she's sending us this message that she recorded just the day before she was put into prison.
Filed criminal cases against me based on manufactured stories accusing me of involvement in the drug trade. According to the mastermind of the filing of cases against me, none other than the President Rodrigo Duterte, she has to face the music. It took months to develop the case. They really have such nerve, all of them. Of course, it would take you this long to manufacture lies against me. There must be so much fentanyl in Mr. Duterte's brain for him to have the gall to boast of the testimonies of their witnesses who are convicted drug lords and whose statements contradict each other. Liars, hypocrites. As reward for testifying against me, this administration, through the Department of Justice, restored the privileges of his inmates, the very same privileges that I put an end to during my term as the Secretary of Justice. The revolting plan: convicted criminals become state witnesses so they can be exonerated from their crimes. They are not the heroes of this administration is forcing us to believe. Where else in the world have you seen drug lords turn into state witnesses? All they have ever done is to follow the badly written script of this administration, to pin me down with baseless accusations of their personal gain. In the very beginning, we have seen the brand of injustice his regime is pushing for. As they continue to malign and persecute me, meanwhile, Mr. Vitaliano Aguirre of the DOJ cuddled prisoners in exchange for their testimonies, and Solicitor General Jose Calida sought the acquittal of the convicted kidnapper and indicted mastermind of pork barrel scandal, Janet Lim Napoles. From the very beginning, I knew that this regime would not seek true justice. The filing of criminal cases against me is only the fulfillment of Mr. Duterte's fixation for revenge against me because of my investigation of the Davao Death Squad when I was then the chairperson of the Commission on Human Rights. The Filipino people know your style, Mr. President, to put the rule of law in your hands, silence your critics, and destroy those who will go against your caprices. Actually, this should no longer surprise us. If the President supported a policy of killing the poor and drug offenders, what is then stopping him from doing whatever comes into his head? Absolve big-time drug lords, acquit a kidnapper and queen of pork barrel scandal, fabricate stories and plant evidence against his critics, which he admitted he used to do when he was a fiscal, and continue killing the poor with impunity. We all know that every action of a president has no clear basis. He does it on a whim, not because it is right or wrong, but because he can do it and we are letting him. This is impunity. Whatever he does, he is confident that he is free from any punishment. This all started when he discovered as mayor of Davao City that he could kill people without accountability. Truth is, Even though he has killed over 1,000 in Davao and over 7,000 throughout the Philippines with his death squads and rogue police, he has yet to pay for it under the law. But perhaps now he can be made accountable for his horrible crime against humanity. Recently, the president's right-hand man in the Davao death squad, police officer Arturo Las Cañas, finally revealed himself. Just like his former comrade, Edgar Matobato, he too made a public confession about the killings they carried out in Davao City upon the orders of President Duterte himself. He, together with police officer Samson Sonny Benaventura, are the brains and hands of President Duterte in any of the Davao death squad operations. With the revelation of Las Cañas, there is no more doubt that our president is a murderer and a sociopathic serial killer. This is also the reason why we are experiencing all the madness in government under this regime that is being led by the #1 criminal in the entire Philippines, if not in the whole world, none other than President Rodrigo Duterte. Let's not ask anymore. How come there seems to be a reunion of questionable characters under the Duterte regime, from the Marcoses to Arroyo and up to Napoles, together with the lawyers and operators? Also, there are the main enforcers of President Duterte's orders, Secretary Aguirre and Solgen Calida, who are among the abusive and arrogant officials in our government. Let's no longer ask why, during the Duterte regime, all the criminals, the corrupt, the savages, and those with evil souls have returned and are thriving. I speak before you with honor and integrity as my only defense. As former Human Rights Chairperson and Justice Secretary, I can look everyone straight in the eye and say, my track record as a public servant has never been tarnished by any wrongdoing except until now based on manufactured lies. I have never used and will never use my position for my personal interest. I say, I am innocent. I have never betrayed, and I will never betray the trust of my country and the Filipino people. Clearly, this administration has evil and dangerous plans to make an example of me, to intimidate, silence, and destroy anyone who dares challenge them, to draw public attention away from the government's abuses and failures, and to cover up their most murderous war on drugs. In the past 7 months, the death toll of his war, or of this war, has exceeded the number of deaths recorded during the 14 years of martial law and the Marcos regime. The fight is not mine alone. This fight is our fight for the victims of government's failed war on drugs, especially for 7-year-old Sanino Butucan of Cebu, 5-year-olds Danica May Garcia of Pangasinan and Francisco Manosca of Pasay City, and 4-year-old Althea Fem Barbon of Negros Oriental. Perpetrators of these hideous crimes have no conscience. Even worse than them are those in power who allow this to happen. From all this violence, killings, and crooked governance of the Duterte regime, clearly, I am not the public enemy #1 here, but this regime who has no respect for basic human rights, especially the right to life. Since the start of his term, Mr. Duterte has brought in the entire machinery of the state to silence me and to destroy my person, credibility, and honor as a woman. If they can do this to a sitting senator, what is stopping this administration from doing the same to ordinary Filipinos? If they think that by jailing me, I will turn my back on my principles, they are mistaken. Instead, they have encouraged me more to pursue truth and justice. I have long prepared myself to be a political prisoner of this regime. Rest assured that I will answer all the accusations against me in the proper time and venue. To the best of my ability, I will fulfill my duties as Senator of the Republic. Even in prison, even as I continue to be persecuted by this government for as long as I live, I will continue fighting the good fight up to my very last breath. To Mr. Duterte, stop the killings now. Stop harassing me. Stop this madness. Instead, the Filipino people are begging for your undivided attention to address the myriad problems our country faces. I call on the members of the Fourth Estate to guard our fragile democracy against attempts to curtail our rights and freedom and against the return of dictatorship. I urge people of conscience everywhere, please pray for the Philippines. I ask you to remain vigilant and continue to fight so that true justice and respect for human rights prevail. Let us not allow this administration to continue violating our Constitution, disrespecting our laws, and taking the lives of our countrymen. I am hopeful that we will not remain silent in the face of the daily killings taking place in our midst, the flagrant violations of our fundamental rights, and the deliberate efforts to poison our minds and that of our children. Let us fight for our rights. Let us fight for justice. Let us fight for democracy.
Yes, I think the senator deserves a warm round of applause. I mean, just imagine the courage, her courage for recording this just the day before she was arrested. I mean, she can't hear us, but those who are representing her this evening, and I pay tribute to them, they can hear us. So it is my pleasure to call upon stage the head of cabinet, Philippe Sawali of Leila de Lima, is the head of cabinet. So it's my pleasure to welcome Chloé Rémond, the director of this film. So, and she is actually a journalist based in Manila. We also have Agnes Callamard, who's a Special Rapporteur for the United Nations on summary, arbitrary, and extrajudicial executions. Good evening, Agnes. And we should have with us Rosemarie Trajano, who's a human rights activist in the Philippines, and she should be joining us by Skype, and I hope we get a good connection. So I'm going to try and set the basis for this debate. So let's talk about the latest news, and then we will be told more about the imprisonment of the Senator Mrs. de Lima, and things seem pretty clear, but many questions remain unanswered, and we'll also be thinking of possible solutions to this catastrophic situation, and what could be the legal outcome, and how can we ensure the return to democracy and the respect of human rights. Rosemarie Trajano, are you there? So I've been told that we don't have the connection with Skype. So Philippe Sawali, thank you for being here with us this evening. I'll start by asking you a question. So do you have any news of the senator?
Good evening.
It's working.
Yes, good evening. News about the senator. The senator, since February 24, 2017, is being detained at the national headquarters of the Philippine National Police It's a custodial center in Quezon City in Metro Manila.
Je vais demander à Chloé de vous mettre là. Excusez-moi.
She's being arrested and in detention pursuant to an arrest order and an arrest warrant to pay regional trial court judge in Metro Manila on alleged illegal drug trading offense. We are questioning, the lawyers of Senator De Lima are questioning the validity and propriety of the arrest warrant and the arrest order before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is currently conducting oral arguments on the merits of her case. There will be a resumption of the oral argument on Tuesday. We're hoping that the full merits of the case will be ventilated and evaluated by the Supreme Court.
What are the conditions of her detention? Because she's a senator, is she allowed to privileges, so to speak, that other prisoners do not have? What is the physical situation in which she finds herself? Is she alone? What is the actual situation of her
Okay, as regards the actual physical condition of the facility, she's alone there in one room in a compound. She's deprived of certain means of communication like electronic gadgets, internet. She's still a sitting senator, but she has impaired abilities insofar as conducting her affairs as a legislator. Of course, the staff, just like me, can go to her, and lawyers of her can visit her
But you
every
don't
day.
have direct communication, you cannot talk to her on the phone, she cannot tweet.
We
There's
cannot.
nothing she can do in terms of directly communicating.
No,
with you.
directly communicating, immediately making it known her position on certain issues. No, she cannot do that. There are certain disabilities.
The situation has somewhat escalated. The European Union is now calling her a political prisoner, but Rodrigo Duterte says she's a criminal. This is a criminal case. This is not, she's not a political prisoner, arguing even that her arrest follows the receipt from foreign intelligence sources that she's actually involved in the drug trade. What do you say to that?
Well, it's really good that the European Union and other reputable organizations internationally and locally in the Philippines have been voicing out strong statements of indignation regarding the arrest of Senator De Lima, calling even for immediate release of the senator and for provision of adequate security, personal security to the senator. That's good. As regards your question of whether or not the cases are politically charged or politically motivated, of course, that the evidence, the records are clear. As stated in the video of the senator, she explained and tried to explain that really all these things that's happening to her are rooted in that long history of personal animosity and antagonism on behalf of the senator towards her for quite a long time, since she was a chairperson of the Philippine Commission on Human Rights way back in 2009 when she led investigation of the so-called Davao Death Squad. Yes.
Sorry. No,
Yes.
You were. We can't hear you. Are you saying something here? Right. Can you speak up? We really can't hear you. What are you trying to say? I'm sorry. You know what? We'll go back to the audience a bit later. You have ample times to ask questions and remarks. I'd like to go on with the panel, if I may, madam. Thank you very much for your question. We'll take it again later. Let me ask you this. The festival runs concurrently to the March session of the Human Rights Council. Do you think there's a relationship between her arrest? Why now? It was public notice that she would come to Geneva. It was public notice that she would meet with a number of people in Geneva during the session, including Agnes Callamard. Do you think there's a relationship there? Why was she arrested now?
Personally, I wouldn't know that if there is a relationship or if it's just coincidental that this arrest happened just days before the International Film Festival on Human Rights.
No, I was talking about the Human Rights Council rather than the festival.
The Human Rights Council.
The session, the March session of the Human Rights Council.
I really wouldn't know that if the timing was intentional or not.
Last question to you on that very issue. She expressed, or you expressed, I guess she expressed to you, which then you said that she was hopeful that she'd be out by Easter. Is her release something that you certainly hope for, but you think she'll be released by Easter?
Well, that's a prayer and the hope of the senator that she would be able to go back home to Bicol, in her home city in Iriga City, in Camarines Sur, to join the yearly activities there during Good Friday. That was her personal. That was personal to her, as a very religious and spiritual person. But as regards your question, whether or not she will actually be released, that will be up to the Supreme Court or the lower court.
When was the last time you saw her?
The last time I saw her was just Wednesday around lunchtime, hours before we took the flight from Manila to Doha and then Geneva.
Was she in good spirit?
Yes, despite what I just described earlier as certain disabilities and limitations as to access, she's still in good spirits. She's still very hopeful that she will be able to be released from prison.
She obviously is a fighter.
Yes, she is. She is a fighter.
Thank you, Philippe. Chloé Rémond, merci d'être parmi nous. On a vu votre
Chloé Rémond, thank you for being here. We have seen your report, which is very interesting in many aspects. We have the feeling that there is an instrumentalization by Rodrigo Duterte and his regime of this war on drug, which is fought in Manila. You have done this extraordinary work. It's to go and see the witnesses. And can you explain us how were the conditions of the shooting? Because you are told beforehand that an arrest is going to be. Because why are you informed in beforehand? You are the persons who are filming this war and these summary executions. Is this a part of propaganda of the regime? And when yes, why? Micro.
C'est bon, allez-y.
C'est bon?
Oui.
Yeah.
Oui, alors ça fait vraiment partie de la propagande.
This is part of the propaganda of the regime of the prison. He wants to have the media watching closely this war on drugs, because it is somehow something which helps to keep him popular amongst the population, and he has to demonstrate that he is a man of action, that he is serious, meaning it. His symbol is the fist. And so he uses all the media for that. But it's double-sided, of course, because when you show what you have shown, it creates an opposition. Yes, but the opposition is very weak. You have Justice Senator Leila de Lima, who launched this investigation in the Senate. But provided for her, there is nobody, very few people in the political circles or in the economical circle who are opposing to what is happening now. And he is afraid of nothing, Duterte. He wants to remain popular in the population, and so he uses this weapon of war on drugs. I was asking you, Mrs. Callamard, what is your first reaction about this film?
La première chose que je voudrais dire, d'abord,
First thing I would like to say is rather a reaction
au discours de la sénatrice que j'ai trouvé
the
très
speech
fort
of the senator, which was very strong, which was
très
very
courageux. Elle a dit
brave.
quelque chose.
She said
Je
something
savais pas qu'elle le
I
disait
didn't
parce que
know
moi, en
she
fait,
would say that
je reprends
because
ça maintenant depuis plusieurs
I
semaines.
have been
C'est
saying
de
that
décrire
for
la
weeks.
situation
It's trying to
aux
describe the
Philippines
situation in
une
Philippines
crise
like
des droits
as a
humains.
crisis of human
Pour moi,
rights.
dans le
For
cadre de mon
me,
travail en tant que
and
rapporteur spécial,
as special
il s'agit
rapporteur in my work,
de
I
la
have
situation
to.
la pire
It's the worst
après des
situation
situations de conflit armé.
after an armed
Il n'y a pas
conflict
d'autre
situation.
pays en
There
ce
is
moment
no country
qui
in the
soit dans des
world
situations,
which
entre guillemets, de paix,
could be in
où
peace,
l'on retrouve
quote
un tel,
unquote, in
de
peace,
telles
where you
exécutions
have
dans les chiffres
such an amount of
que l'on retrouve
execution
et avec l'impunité
and with the
qui...
impunity
Donc ça, c'est
which
la
goes
première
with.
chose.
This is the first thing. How are the estimation of deaths? About 8,000 since the beginning of July.
Dont un tiers
A
en gros
third
serait
of
lié à
them
des actions de la
would be
police
linked
et
to
le reste
police
à des
actions
actions
and the rest
de groupes
to
de vigilantistes,
vigilance
d'escadrons de la mort.
groups and death
La
squadrons.
deuxième chose, c'est que
The
ce
second
n'est
thing
qu'un seul
is
aspect, ces
it's only
exécutions,
one
c'est qu'un seul aspect de
aspect
la crise, comme en
of
fait
this
la sénatrice le
crisis,
fait très bien
as
remarquer,
the
et je
senator
voudrais
is
bien mettre ça en avant.
rightly
Il y a des
says
exécutions,
and
il y
highlights.
a
You have the
l'impunité qui est
executions,
attachée
you have the
aux
impunity, which is
exécutions,
is connected to the executions. You have 100% of
il y a les
impunity.
détentions
Then you have the
énormes,
detention,
donc
the
la
huge
situation dans
amount
les
of
prisons qui est
prisoners who are in jail, and the
conséquence
situation
directe
in the
de
detention
ce qui
centers,
se passe et
which
que
is a
vous avez
direct
très
consequence
bien
of what is
mis en
happening now,
avant.
and you have
Le droit à
shown
la
this in
santé,
your film, the right to
le droit
health,
des drogués, entre
the
guillemets, à la
right
santé,
of the drug
la
addicts
détention
to health, the
des,
detention
entre guillemets, des
of
drogués de
the
nouveau, tout ça
so-called
pose
drug
d'énormes
addicts.
problèmes.
This
L'incitation à la violence,
gives way to
un autre facteur,
a lot
une
of
autre
problems, and there's
violation.
also this
Donc, il ne
incitation
s'agit pas
to
que seulement, même si c'est énorme,
violence.
c'est une
So
crise,
it's a huge
une vaste
crisis
crise qui se passe.
which is
Et le film le
taking place, and the
représente,
film
a
shows
bien
it
mis ça
very
en
well
avant.
and has
Et la
put
sénatrice
this forward, and
très bien.
the senator
La
has
chose sur
shown it
laquelle je
as
voulais
well.
réagir, c'est
The other thing I wanted to
les
react
commentaires des
upon
policiers
is
quand ils disent
the
nous on réagit,
comments of the
tue parce
police
que
forces.
on doit
They say
se
we are
protéger.
killing because we have to protect ourselves.
D'abord, les exécutions de la police ne font pas
Police
l'objet
execution
C'est une
are not
enquête
submitted to
interne
inquiries.
administrative
It's
qui
just an
ne-
internal
ne-
administrative
en
investigation,
rien une
which is
enquête,
not
sérieuse.
a serious
Premièrement.
investigation. This is
Deuxièmement,
first thing. Secondly,
l'utilisation
the
excessive de la force
the
par la
excessive
police
use of force by police
fait l'objet de standards très stricts.
is connected with very strict
Ceux qui sont
standards.
liés à la nécessité,
The
à la
necessity,
proportionnalité
the proportionality,
et
and
le
also
standard de précaution.
the standard of
Selon
precaution.
les peu d'enquêtes qui ont été
According
faites
to the
par
few
la
inquiries
Commission des droits de l'homme,
which have been made
par
by
quelques
the
journalistes,
Human Rights Commission and by a
environ
few journalists,
97%
about 97%
des exécutions ont eu lieu
percent of the
dans un
execution
cadre qui n'avait rien à voir avec
took
la
place
légitime
in a frame which had
Donc,
nothing to do with
il y a un fort
self-defense.
soupçon, a
So
priori,
there is a
de-
big
d'exécution,
suspicion that we're facing extrajudicial execution. I don't want to interrupt you. We are going to come back to this problem, which is very important. But I would like to go to Manila because Rosa Trajano is on Skype with us. Rosa.
Yeah, here you are. We're absolutely delighted to have you. What time is it in Manila? 4 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, about 4:30 in the morning.
Thank you very, very much for bringing your expertise on this matter. I'd like you to comment on what Agnes Callamard just said, which is a human rights crisis. How long have you been active in human rights in the Philippines?
I've been working as human rights defender for 30 years now.
30 years. Is it fair to say that this is the worst situation that you've ever seen in the Philippines?
Of course, we have the martial law years, but after the martial law years, yes, it's fair to say that this is the worst administration we have so many after at least 4 presidents.
Are you, as a defender, please again, we will go to the audience after the debate. I appreciate really, this is a platform for dialogue and debate. We will go back to the audience. I'd like to go on with my conversation with the host. You mentioned martial law. This is not the law. I mean, this is precisely one of the characteristics of what's happening now. We are completely outside of the legal realm, right?
Yes, in fact, we're seeing actually a de facto martial law rule in the Philippines because everything and anything can really be done, no? Especially the repressive actions, the disregard of rule of law. And this is really very disheartening and very frightening.
Are you yourself, as a human rights activist and defender, threatened? Are you in a position, in a more difficult position that you were under the previous presidency, including, I'm not probably referring to the Aquino third presidency, but are you yourself and your team threatened in any way?
We can still act as we want and campaign as we are doing. But unfortunately, we have heard and we have an intelligence report, no, from friends from the military and from the police that we are actually in 2 lists by the police and the military. One was persons of authority and another a watch list from the military. 5 of us, including myself and 5 of my colleagues from In Defense of Human Rights and Dignity Movement, are allegedly in this list.
We heard, and we will come back to that Agnes Callamard was not able to investigate because the conditions of her safety would not be guaranteed. What do you concretely do today as a human rights defender against what's happening? What does your organization do? How do you do it? What do you think can be done?
We are continuously documenting cases. In fact, when our president was still a mayor in Davao, we have been documenting the cases of the Davao Death Squad. And until now, we have seen the template being implemented at the national level. So documentation is very important, and we plan to submit that to the Special Rapporteur. We are also redefining and redesigning our human rights education kit because we know that the human rights education we have conducted in the past are not effective. Now we really have to go and rethink on how we can effectively provide the people the concept of human rights, which they will really understand. Unfortunately, our president, our current government is really distorting the human rights concept and there are various vilifications being done against the human rights community.
We mentioned, and Anne-Claire came back to that, and this is something that indeed has been on our minds as we were preparing for this forum, the rise of the strong men, l'homme fort. And we have names, Erdogan in Turkey, and Trump in the US, and now Duterte, and others, Orban, and we can extend the list. And it's probably a bit of a, we need to go into a finer analysis of actually the conditions under which those strong men have risen, have been elected. So I'm trying to get an idea of, and I'm going to use Rose, Philippe, and Chloé's analysis on this one. Unlike Trump, for instance, even though it appears that all these guys sort of copy each other, and when something works for one, they're going to borrow the best practices, if I may say, in horror of doing things that seem to be working somewhere else. But still, essentially, Duterte has been on the fringe of Filipino politics for a number of years. 20 years or something. Where does he come from? And in the end, why did he win the elections against candidates, which, not unlike Trump, were better armed, better financed than he was? What is it that allowed Duterte to be elected?
I would say that the 30 years after martial law, the EDSA revolution and the people power revolution did not really provide its promises of better lives for all Filipinos. I think Duterte was elected because of frustrations, because of disappointments from many, many Filipinos, especially those who are in the marginalized groups. And when he came and he is talking sense and with his political will, I think that actually made him win.
But if I'm correct, the previous administration of Aquino III had actively worked against corruption, including by indicting, if I'm not wrong, the former president. There was a lot of work done, and economic growth had been risen. The Philippines were an Asian tiger suddenly. So what is it? At what point suddenly? What made people vote for Duterte? Frustration, inequalities. Can you go into this so we have a better idea of finally why was this man capable of being elected?
Yes, it's frustration and inequality. We really have a good macroeconomic policies, but it's not trickling down to the people. And the percentage of those who are impoverished are still spreading, while those who are rich are getting richer. So inequality is widespread. There are many Filipinos who still go hungry. The work is not secured. These are the main reasons why the frustrations was widespread during Aquino time. No? And it's not, of course, only during the Aquino time. The neoliberal policies has pervaded and persisted, and until now, it's still also the policy of the new president.
Do you agree, Philip, with that?
There's a certain viewpoint that supports that position, that there was indeed growing frustration over what they call a failure of EDSA to really deliver what was promised to the vast majority of the Filipino people. There's still elitist politics. There's oligarchy in business. There's still unequal structure insofar as distribution of wealth. That, I think, was the very basic message that got across to the Filipino electorate in May 2016, and there was effective messaging on part of then presidential candidate Duterte. That was one viewpoint that I can more or less also subscribe to.
Chloé Rémond, vous partagez ça? Vous avez couvert ça? Vous connaissez?
Rémond, you agree with that? You have been in Philippines. How do you explain the fact that Rodrigo Duterte managed to be elected against other contenders who were better, had better financing and better weapons? But he is an incarnation of the. He's an embodiment of the disruption of a change compared to the other presidency, because there were dynasties of presidents, and he is a man of the people. He is from the people, and he is also somebody who has proposals which are completely different. He's quite a bit revolutionary. He will propose a social program to access of contraceptive medicines for women, and this he managed also to fight against the lobby of the church, because 80% of the Filipinos are Catholics. So he is the people. He's the voice of the people, and he has a mandate as a mayor, and he had activities who go and meet the people. And this is a difference compared to the previous political dynasties and who are just at power just to get rich and richer. Following this campaign, did you have the feeling, did one have the feeling that this war on drug would be led in this way? And was it something which was explicit of the candidate Duterte? He said, if I'm elected, I'm going to fight in this way. Yes, this was clear. It was no surprise. He was not so precise using the words for it. He just was explaining, I am going to put an end to eradicate this plea of Philippines and use the means to that. And he had this incredible sentence. Very often he has an incredible sentence. He was talking about Hitler, and he said, Hitler killed 6 million of Jews. There are 3 million of Filipinos who are drug addicts. I have no problem in killing all of them, and I want to kill them all so that we get rid of these peoples. It's just incredible. He's just confessing that himself he assassinated with his own hand people. Yes, it's incredible. And it's also, he compared himself to Idi Amin Dada. He put the death penalty again. He confessed that his ambition was to become a dictator, and he was very precise. And he says also, yes, I used, and the senator is saying that in her message, he must have his head full of this substance, which is the same substance which killed Michael Jackson and other. He's a consumer. He uses drugs. He has health problems, and he's just confessing things. And the next day, his spokesman say, no, it was just a joke. You didn't understand anything. He was just provoking, but he's not. He doesn't think what he's saying. So it's again such a personality which is who is incredible. Again, you have a different person. Yes, it's quite complicated to explain Rodrigo Duterte. I wouldn't put a psychological diagnosis because I don't know what is happening in his head and what is his last ambition is. But in Philippines, all these provocations, which seem quite shocking to us, are somehow justified. Every time I ask, but how can you accept that? They all tell me it's humor. He comes from Visayas, it's the south of Philippines, Mindanao. It's a whole different context. They have a special humor. We foreigners cannot understand. Even in Manila, we are not able to understand this humor. So, nevertheless, he has been elected with this discourse, with this behavior, and presently he is setting up what he has promised.
Thank you for being with us. We'll come back to you. I just want to go back to Agnes Callamard and really talk a bit more about those executions. It
appears that you have two kinds of execution. You have at the same time those traps where the police organizes these traffics and takes as an argument she traps the dealers, and then you have these death squadrons where you were speaking of, and under cover of this, with the argument that they are war on drugs, they are fighting this war against the poor people who will never have the means to afford a lawyer or something like that, or to be defended. And it's like a purge against opponents to the regime. Am I right saying so? The last aspect, I would not agree. provided for the senator who has been imprisoned. Of course, you have a few cases of human rights activists and defenders, and there were 2 journalists since the president was elected who have been killed. We had 2 lawyers as well. Maybe you can, and 1 or 2 human rights defenders. But I wouldn't say for the time being that this war, quote unquote, on drugs leads to the execution of human rights defenders or of journalists. The 8,000 deaths are precisely targeted, usually men, rather young, very poor, or living in slums, on poor districts, and who didn't have very good, who are not connected to drugs. But I would like to stress one thing. We are speaking about an extrajudicial process. When people like police or others say that those who were killed were drug addicts or drug pushers, you come to this conclusion without any investigation. So these are people who are completely dehumanized. They are described in a very generic way. They are no more human beings. And there were several press declarations from the president where he stated that the drug addicts are not human beings. The criminals are not human. So it's a dehumanization of the victims, which is awfully worrying, because it's more. We are more than the beginning. It's more than a necessary condition in order to come to mass murders. So you have this incitement to violence. And you have also these death squadrons who are competing amongst each other, and they are also responsible for this 8,000 deaths. And all the evidence I got and all the cases which were reported to me showed that the police is very strongly involved in these death squads. As for the murders committed by the police, where you find weapons or drugs, we receive a lot of reports about cases which are being investigated by the Commission on Human Rights or the NGOs. And witnesses in about, let's say, in the 30 cases which have been well investigated, 28 cases out of 30, you have witnesses who are ready to testify that the police came and put a weapon on the side of the bodies in order to justify the killing. So the last point I would like to highlight is the fact that there is no investigation is in itself a violation of the right to life. It's not only about killing somebody, which is already a violation of the right to life, but the fact that there is no investigation is another violation. So we have to insist the government and the public authority that the inquiry after a murder or after excessive use of force by police is not something you do or not. It's a duty that Philippines has to do. So the fact that there is no investigation is very important for me.
If I may add, please. Not all casualties in this so-called drug on war are drug suspects, meaning users or pushers of drugs. As mentioned by the senator, some casualties here are unintended targets, collateral victims, they call them. Some are children, whose names were even mentioned by Senator De Lima in her video message. Some are even clearly not in the drug watch list. They are not even into drugs, really. And you may have seen or read some of the reports, for example, of the Human Rights Watch, saying that really there were accounts of relatives and eyewitnesses of questionable handling by the police in a supposedly drug-related operations. What Dr. Callamard mentioned, there are about 30 or so cases being investigated by the Commission on Human Rights in the Philippines. Some show telltale signs of really questionable handling by the police, that there were really cases of EJKs, or planting of evidence.
Thank you, Philippe. If I may go back to the question I had for Agnes Callamard, she said that all this is based on evidence. Vous n'avez pas pu aller enquêter sur.
You weren't able to investigate in situ because the safety conditions didn't exist. So tell us why and how it so happens that you weren't able to investigate on site, and that you can't do your work because you can't actually go there. So it's not the safety conditions that stopped me from investigating. It's because the government had actually issued 3 conditions for my visit, 3 prerequisites that violate the code of conduct that I signed when I became a special rapporteur. The government, the president, asked me to actually make an oath before interviewing or writing President Duterte, yes. And then the second prerequisite, to have a public debate with the president himself and to answer all his questions in public. So the oath, quote unquote, this is something I cannot do in the context of my mandate. I actually took an oath vis-à-vis the member states, the 48 member states of the Council of Human Rights who elected me. So I actually make an oath to them, and I take an oath before all those who gave me a mandate. I don't take an oath before President Duterte. Now, as regarding the public debate, I mean, this doesn't frighten me, it doesn't worry me, but when I actually go on a mission, this was a very short mission, 1 week, 10 days mission, and okay, the conclusions are preliminary conclusions at the end of that period, and I need to continue with my research after that. That is why the code of conduct of the special rapporteurs require everything to be dealt with confidentially, and there needs to be the possibility of having a confidential exchange with the government where I expose my preliminary report so they can actually react, so that there is a dialogue. All of this is made impossible in the context of a public debate. I suggested to President Duterte to go before the media and to have a short discussion at the end of my mission that would have allowed him, without having a public debate, that would allow the president, if he doesn't agree with my preliminary conclusions, to say he is not in agreement, and that we would have a debate later on. But so these 3 prerequisites or conditions, I rejected them. The government insisted and continues insisting. What I'd like to say also is that, as of September, I offered the government to carry out a mission, but to do it with the Special Rapporteur on the right to health care. And once again, this can be seen in your report. I mean, again, the problem of executions is connected to the drug problem, also to a public health problem, and Senator De Lima made this quite clear. That is why it is so fundamental to have a multidisciplinary approach that takes into account all of these aspects, health, and this joint mission was rejected. So I suggested a meeting of experts. The government and President Duterte are accusing me of not offering solutions to the drug problem. First of all, that's not my mandate. My mandate is to report on the executions. So the Special Rapporteur on Health, we offered to do a meeting with experts from the world over who then can actually give solutions to the drug problem. I mean, there's a lot of experience that could be shared with the Filipino government if the government is ready to listen. But every time someone has mentioned something different, like the former president of Colombia, who said, so he told President Duterte, don't repeat the mistake I made. The war on drug doesn't work, and it's not going to solve the issue of trafficking or the number of drug users. So Duterte said the former Colombian president was an idiot. So I'd like to insist upon the fact that there are possible solutions, and many strategies have been tried out, experimented with to deal with the drug problem, but the government has to be willing to listen to what the experts can contribute and the solutions they can provide.
Effectivement, votre mandat n'est pas sur la drogue.
Okay, I mean, your mandate doesn't include finding problems to the drug use, and now the fact that there's a worsening of the situation, and there's more, and the executions, summary executions are continuing when the opposition is behind bars. I mean, don't you feel that you should, go there with a caveat before the United Nations, considering the extraordinary situation? I must still go and inquire, and I'll have a public debate with Mr. Duterte without betraying your values. And no, I can't. Absolutely not. I cannot. I mean, I think we should. I mean, it's not. It has nothing to do with me. I can't. Again, this is not my own personal decision. If I do that today or in 1 month's time, other governments could ask or expect or demand the same thing from others. The whole system will fall apart. The code of conduct that was decided between the member state and the special rapporteurs has been discussed inside out. The code of conduct is not a perfect one, but it makes sense to protect both the special rapporteurs and the member states. So, okay, we wanted to hear. So,
quickly to Rose. Je ne veux pas donner le sentiment que je prolonge la discussion sur scène pour éviter le débat avec eux.
Again, I mean, I don't want to avoid the questions from the audience, and it's obvious that there will be.
Very briefly, if I may, because I'd like to quickly go back to Rose and ask her a question.
Okay. What I wanted to add were some thoughts from Senator De Lima on the issue of investigation. It's really unfortunate that Dr. Callamard and her team would not be able to conduct the country visit. But let me share that it was Senator De Lima who filed the Senate proposed resolution urging the Executive Department through the Department of Foreign Affairs to extend invitation to Dr. Callamard and her team. The senator is still hopeful, though, that those impossible conditions would be lifted. Nonetheless, it is part of her dissenting report to the Senate Committee's majority report on the inquiry on the spate of extrajudicial killings. Last December, she filed the report. One of her recommendations was to hold and conduct an independent investigation manned by reputable people with integrity and unquestionable competence. But if it cannot be done on a national level, she's now thinking of filing a resolution aligned with the European Parliament's idea of having an international investigation at the level of perhaps the Human Rights Council of the United Nations, so that an impartial investigation without further delay, independent, would be conducted at the soonest possible time.
Thank you. My last question before we go to the audience, I'm going to come back to you, Rose, and I want to bring you in, and Chloé as well. If, as we just saw and heard, no investigation is possible, who can put pressure on Rodrigo Duterte today? What is the way out or the way in of bringing back a modicus of order, of respect for law? Who can apply pressure and how should it be done? Particularly now that Duterte is changing his policies, going to Beijing, is pivoting towards China, whose record on human rights is questionable as well. Who can put pressure on Rodrigo Duterte today? Rose?
That's a very difficult question. I really do not know what will change his mind. But he actually has his own mind. No? He says something, but the executive actually do another thing. So this is a tricky question. I think those who are supporting him and those he claimed to be his staunch supporter can actually change his mind. He is always referring to the majority of the people. Unfortunately, until the majority of the people understands what's happening, embrace the true, genuine human rights concepts, we will be eluded with this very important issue to combat impunity and extrajudicial killings. I am not really even sure if other governments, the United States or even the European Union, who's calling for the investigation, can actually change his mind. Unfortunately, that is a very difficult question.
Thank you.
If I may, en français peut-être.
So the surveys that were carried out and Duterte's supporters were questioned, and they're okay with the war on drugs, but the vast majority are not for the executions. So people, can think for themselves. I mean, they're intelligent. I mean, the Filipinos, are not actually hungry for blood. I mean, they're not bloodthirsty. And you have to be careful not to describe the Filipino people to see, dead bodies in the streets of the suburbs and slums. I know the Filipino. That's not how it is. I mean, the Filipinos, don't agree with all these executions. The Filipinos, yes, they feel that it's necessary to actually find solutions to the drug problem, but they're not okay with the deaths. So something can be done then. So in the last month or so, and since the senator started the process, the civil society, the church, there's a very important person who for the last month and a half, 2 months, goes against the president because of these murders. So the church, is actually can have a definite impact. The civil society, our friend represents the civil society, for the last 2 months is starting to investigate, and they're actually making case files. The judiciary system is reacting. The families of the victims, and they feel somewhat reassured. So what they did is to go and actually lodge complaints against the police or the death squads, and in 3 cases they requested the judge to give them actually a protective order. So the families must be protected against the police action, and the judicial system has granted them this protective order to the family. The media, so there are independent journalists, there are independent media who are doing fantastic work in the Philippines. So as far as I'm concerned, I feel that, I mean, you have those people who could act and who will actually get things, obtain change. So do you agree with what was just said? Yes, I totally agree with what Agnes Callamard just said. So if things can change, it'll come from the Filipinos themselves and not from the international community. I think it'll be the Filipinos and them. I don't
comment on that.
Okay, Senator De Lima is aware of that certain criticism that there's no such widespread protest in the Philippines, given the magnitude of the problem that we're facing in our country. But we must understand that our ancestors in 1896 started the Philippine Revolution and declared the first democratic government in Asia. And then in 1986, we gifted the world with people power. I'm not saying that there will be another people power or revolution or that sort of thing, but there's a growing movement of people, of individuals, of organizations, including church, some responsible members of media, the academe, some students, lawyers. Dr. Callamard mentioned about formal legal actions taken to the Supreme Court to question Tokhang and the drug-related operations of the police. At least 2 legal victories were secured by the victims and their families so far. So there's a growing movement of people, individuals, and organizations that are coming out now and voicing their position as regards the issue. There are other organizations, even internationally, that publicly announce their strong indignation as regards the problem of EJKs in the Philippines.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you, Rose.
Okay, may I just add?
Yeah, briefly, if I may, because I really want to go to the audience. So if you think you can answer the question of the audience, but yeah, briefly.
Yeah, briefly. I also agree to all the panelists mentioned about the growing voices against killings, but we also have to understand that the political situation in the Philippines is getting really very dynamic. We now have a grassroots mass movement. We call it Masa Masir, and it's actually, we think, a local intelligence unit which is actually countering the voices of those who are against extrajudicial killing.
Thank you. Eh bien, on va passer maintenant aux questions du public et j'espère qu'en partageant l'expertise...
We're going to give the floor to the audience, and through all the light that's been shed by our panelists, you'll be able to ask questions. So, Madam...
Then I would go back to you. Where are you?
Thank you.
It's on. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Well, I would just like to mention that the lady senator, where they portray as the political prisoner, is accused of involving in the illegal drugs in the Philippines. During her term as the Chief Justice of the Philippines, the drug problem in the Philippines, which we are now facing, and if you go to the Philippines, what's happening now in the Philippines is that every family has a drug problem, including my family. If you know why I am here right now, I came from very far. I live in Germany, but I travel all the way here to voice my words, to voice what is really happening in the Philippines. This is not just a human rights issue. Ms. Callamard is right. This is also a public issue. And now my point is that you need to look at the other side of the story. I appreciate the effort of the journalist. It was well presented. However, the real scenario, mentioning that 7,000 were killed with this drug problem or this war on drugs, it is not. When you check on the details, when you do, I urge all of you to do your research, because this 7,000 killings is not just all about drugs. These are all the murders happening since the president came into power. And I tell you, the last administration, this extrajudicial killings has been happening. And it is not just the time of the president. The president is so angry about the drug problem because it is so huge and you cannot imagine it. You see the people, the very poor people. I have a friend, 12-year-old. 12-year-old is using drugs. That's how difficult, that's how pandemic the situation in the Philippines now. So my question is that if you are concerned about human rights, I urge you, during the term of the president, since he came to power in July.
If I may.
One minute.
All right, I don't want to suppress.
There are 1,900,000 drug surrenderies. The United Nations, we urge all of you to help us with this problem. You come to us, help us with this health problem. Build rehabilitation centers for these people. You see all those accused of drugs in the prison. It is catastrophic. If you're concerned about people, you go to the Philippines and help us build rehabilitation centers and stop meddling with the political affairs of the Philippines, because the case is in court and you need to respect the law of the Philippines.
Thank you, madam. I don't want who wants to answer. And I just want to say one thing, because if it has not been clear, then it's my mistake. There's a completely different issue. Talking about drug policies and prevention of drug policies is a completely different issue from dealing with extrajudicial killing and executions. That is the issue that is debated here. That is the issue that is debated in the UN. We have great empathy for the drug problems in the Philippines, but this, and again, I don't know who wants to answer but the debate is about, and the discussion is about, not about drug policy and the fact that there is a drug problems. Even the senator herself said the failed drug policies of the previous administration. So anyway, Philippe, do you want to answer, or Rose? Who wants to answer?
Well, the senator is not debating that there really is a drug problem, even a serious drug problem in the country. But you're correct. It's a totally different issue as regards EJK. The problem is that there's perception that the drug war is being conducted with legal shortcuts, with highly questionable procedure that disregards due process and disregards basic criminal procedure. That's really the bottom line issue here. That's what the senator is totally against.
Could you agree with this?
Hello?
Madam, can you agree with the position of the Senator's Chief of Staff?
Yeah, I understand that they're concerned of how they deal with these people being killed. So my point is that this is a growing problem in the Philippines. And what we want you to do is to take action, not condemn what we are doing.
Outside of the law?
You can take action.
Do you want to take action outside of the law?
No, it's within the rule of law, of course.
Is it?
Within the rule of law, of course. The president, you are quoting the president, I am willing to kill them. But the real statement is that if you are destroying my country, if you do drugs, then I am willing to kill. That's the criminals when they fight. It's not right to I understand what's the concern, that it's not right to kill or to advise people to do the killing, but that's quite of the strategy of how they deal with the problem.
Right. Thank you very much for your statement.
Can I just say something? I'm very grateful you're raising this point, because since September, I and another special rapporteur have tried to have a dialogue with your government about the fact that, yes, we understand that there is a problem in the Philippines, and two, we want to see how we can assist the Philippines in addressing the problem within the rule of law. There are people around the world, including within the United Nations, that are willing to come to the Philippines. I'm not talking about myself necessarily, others that are willing to come and present to the government the strategies that have been used around the world to tackle drug trafficking and drug addiction, and to present to the president and others what has worked best under certain environment. And so far, the government has not agreed to that proposal. So I hear you, but I think it's up to you to convince your government that there are people who wants to help, who wants to propose, who wants to offer the strategies that will not involve killing 8,000 individuals. There are alternatives. Please convince your government to listen to us, invite us. We will present those alternatives, including to the public, and then you can decide whether there are better ways. And I can assure you, there are more effective ways to tackle drug trafficking and drug addictions which do not involve this bloodthirsty epidemic, which is really poisoning the society.
Another question, sir? It's on. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the word. Maybe quickly, I'm a German citizen. I'm frequently in the Philippines. I have a lot of friends there. I'm supporting a little farm there. And I believe I know a little bit how it looks on the ground. What the lady just said, I can all support this. I think we Europeans and you people up there, you do not really understand what the situation is. I'm not defending extrajudicial killing. This is clear. But you must understand the people, they are fed up. Every family has somebody. And 20, 30, maybe 40% of the people in the Philippines, they have no human rights. Where was the UN before for fighting these people? Have you been fighting for the Yolanda people, which have not received any of this cent? It went all to the Aquino clan.
Do you have a question, sir?
Let me please finish now. The Philippines are owned by 40 to 100 families. I was assuming 40. The ambassador of the Philippines just in Geneva a few months ago told me it's 110 families. Doesn't matter how many. There is a much bigger picture behind this. What you are presenting is not about human rights. It's about getting rid of Duterte. And if we're getting rid of Duterte, this country will never clean up. You will never have the chance to have a country where you find law and order.
I beg to disagree, if I may.
I know you will disagree. And the lady from the UN, it just concerned me when you said you could not go on the invitation. It just shows that everything is fiddled in the background. If you really want to help, then you should have not making announcements months and months before Duterte, you are a murderer, based on data which I'm questioning. If you look to this,
sorry, sir, but
Senator De Lima,
you're talking without knowing. I have never, ever called President Duterte using those words.
No, not you, but the UN did.
Well, then don't accuse me. I am an independent human rights expert. I am not representing the United Nations. That's the first thing. The second thing, you cannot say that the UN did not care about the Philippines before the President Duterte was elected. This is not true at all. I'm looking at my work as a Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial executions. This special mandate has gone to the Philippines on a number of occasions to report on the extrajudicial executions. There has been multiple reports from the UN far before Duterte was elected about the regime of impunity. There has been multiple reports about the impunity related to the killings of journalists.
And what happened? And what happened? What was done? What happened? Nothing.
What do you mean? Well, you are asking me. You are saying the UN didn't say anything. Of course, the UN has said something, and they continue to say it, and they will continue to say it, whether or not it's President Duterte or somebody else. I want to insist that, as far as I am concerned, it doesn't matter who is in power in the Philippines. It's not driving my agenda at all. Frankly, I don't care. I mean, I'm very pleased some of you are supporting President and others are opposing him. He was democratically elected. He's a democratically elected representative of the country. I engage with him. I have absolutely no hidden agenda regarding President Duterte, and I'm very pleased to hear that he's supporting the poor. You know, it's certainly a human rights agenda for me. My point is, support the poor, support women's reproductive health, and do not kill the drug addict or alleged drug addict. I mean, where is the contradiction?
Just a word, if I may, too. On behalf of the festival and what we're doing here, we're offering a platform of discussion when we, as we promote and defend human rights everywhere, anytime, anywhere. That's what we're doing here. It's a free speech. None of us is engaging in anything else. It's not you people. It's Rose Trajano, it's Philippe, Sawali, it's Agnes Callamard, Chloé Rémond, and myself. It's not you people. Thank you, sir.
Sir,
Please.
Can I take the floor, sir? Okay. I'm a Filipino. I live in Switzerland for more than 30 years. I often travel to my home country, and 3 times, sometimes in a year. I would like to thank first and foremost for those who are the panelists, and for the organizer, and those who are here, for your concern and for taking time. I would like to highlight 3 things here, and more focus on the solution. We could say anything. There will always be people say that's wrong or right. I come from a family where I have 4 family members victims of drugs. I lost them. One of my youngest brother is still in prison. He was a pain in the family many, many years. At the age of 7, he got already the first taste of drugs. In school. My sister-in-laws could not even go to work, have to put their profession on the side because they are scared that their kids would get something. Drugs flooding the country for so many years. I've lost mine. And if you people tell that what's going on in the country, it's terrible, yes, it's terrible. And this is now a new norm, potentially, for some people. For you, probably scary. But let me tell you, there is a new beginning in this country. As mentioned by Mr. Sawali, people are awakened. Rose, thank you for informing the public what's going on, why people choose this guy. There was a big country for many years. The Filipinos have been subdued. The Filipinos were just forced to say yes. We have been under the Spanish for 400 years. Then came the Americans, came the Japanese.
If I may,
Mom,
I don't want to suppress
sir,
your speech, but...
Let me, sir,
no,
I would just like to explain, okay? I'm trying to make it, okay. What I'm trying to come here is, please understand, know the country, and then you can help, and we need help. Let me encourage you to consider the language issue here. Some of those that confuse the society, our people, because we have so many cultures, we have so many islands, we talk almost 80 languages, we get also confused. We also have our own debates. Now this goes out of the world, and that it's a bigger problem, communication. Ms. Callamard, I would like to encourage you to reconsider going to the Philippines, and then open up the dialogue. I think a dialogue is important for all of us. An open dialogue that would leave space for everybody to be able to listen from you talking to the president in such a way there is no more doubts that there is motives behind. It will clear the clouds. People will be able to see you, the president, questioning and debating. Who really knows the truth? Who really knows the situation? What's wrong with that? If you are scared, or maybe I shouldn't say that, there are enough Filipinos who could take care of you. I could take my life and defend you there. I could go with you. And there will be some others. Open up the communication. Let's have a dialogue, a healthy dialogue.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's an appeal to you, Agnes Callamard.
I just want to say, absolutely, but I want to insist again, as I have said before, I have opened the dialogue early on in September, and I continue. Whenever I come to Geneva, I meet with the Filipino mission here. I am in constant dialogue, either in person with the mission here or in writing with your government, and I will continue to pursue. I absolutely believe in dialogue and will continue to do so. I do hope that you can also convince your government to not only dialogue with me, but dialogue with a number of other peoples who are willing to offer to the government, as I have mentioned earlier, strategies, options on how to address the very serious problem of drug addiction and drug trade. And I hope that with your pressure and with your with your generosity of spirit, some people in the government in the Philippines are going to say, let's do it. Let's have a public discussion about the mechanisms of responses to drug addiction, to drug trade, which do not involve the extrajudicial or other forms of killings. That's all.
Thank you. I'm going to take one more question. The discussion continues. The discussion continues afterwards. We can all get together at the Café Babel in the hall of we need to end this debate. Two more questions, really questions. You already have the floor. I think you made your point. Dr. Callamard will be back with you. I want to go back. I can't see you up there, but two questions.
Une question. Merci.
Thank you. My name is Patrick Gorla. I'm just wondering, is it easy to have a dialogue with somebody who is insulting the President of the United States, treating him as son of a bitch? It's not easy to have a dialogue. Second question, did the church react? What is the reaction of church in Philippines? Would you like Chloé or Philippe?
Anybody on the panel? Rose? Did the church react? Chloé Rémond, je vous la donne en tant qu'observatrice.
Oui, l'Église.
Yes, church is trying to react and to act. They act more than they react. They act in the backstage. They host the victims. They help the victims. They give concrete support to the victims. But does the church also react in the press? Yes, in the media. Yes, you have archbishops and bishops who are writing, yes, in the press. Yes, another last question.
Micro pour monsieur.
Thank you so much. I guess the question I wanted to pose to the panel, anyone who wants to take it, is the media focuses, I think, a lot on President Duterte and his figure as president and as the man in power. And I want to actually ask you how much of this is related to other factors. For example, one thing that has come up very little in the media, I think, is the laws regarding bounty hunting and corruption within the police in the Philippines. What other factors do you see that are also responsible for this situation which the Philippines finds itself today?
Who wants to answer?
Well, as a representative of Senator De Lima, it's stated in her dissenting report about the problem really with police scalawags, about corrupt police officers. She's not saying all policemen are corrupt, but there's a segment, there's there's quite a number of them. And President Duterte himself admitted that around 40% of the entire police force are what he calls corrupt or crooked. I seem to remember that. But as regards rooting out corruption within the bureaucracy of the police, that will take a long time, and it will require a lot of explaining. But I think the PNP, as well as some responsible members of civil society, are pointing out that there should be widespread reforms within the police force and other law enforcement, security forces and law enforcement agencies in the Philippines, for it to be more effective, for it to be more people-friendly and service-oriented.
Merci, thank you very much. Merci à toutes et à tous. Je vous dis, la discussion se poursuit.
To everybody, the debate goes on. Thank you to Trajano, thank you to Philippe and Chloé Rémond. Thank you for this debate. Thank you for everybody for coming to this festival. And once again, the aim was not to give the floor. It was to liberate this exchange, which was quite strong, but nevertheless positive. Thank you, and you're welcome to go on with the discussion in Café Babel.